Susan, is everyone in from the waiting room?
Yes. I'm looking for Delegate Healy. And we're streaming on YouTube.
Great. Just 1 or 2 more minutes, folks, and we'll get started. We're going to keep a tight program. We won't keep you late. Susan, we're still showing the same number of participants as 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Bear with us.
Here comes another 44.
And has Delegate Healy joined us?
I'm looking.
Okay. Well, let me welcome everyone. Unfortunately, because of the numbers, we have to keep people muted, so we apologize for that in advance. First, we want to thank you for joining our team tonight as we continue our tradition of celebrating Dr. King. We're pretty proud. This is our 16th year of holding this event, which we think is pretty cool. We've been committed to it for a long time, and we're excited to do it in a different format, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us in this different format. And hopefully next year, we're back in Annapolis, sitting down at dinner and having a great program, although tonight will be a great program too, albeit from a distance. Hopefully those of you who did a grab and go meal, we hope that worked out. We haven't gotten any complaints yet. So hopefully that was something you enjoyed. It's the best we could do, given that we couldn't serve you in person. So hopefully that was a benefit of the program. We have a list of some elected officials who are with us, and I'll probably miss a few. So let me just very quickly, Robert Crossland, council member from Hyattsville, Jay Davis, council from Greenbelt, Emmett Jordan, also the council from Greenbelt, Stephanie Hicks from the Democratic Central Committee, I believe Lincoln Lashley from the council of New Carrollton, I believe Lita Mock is joining us from Greenbelt as well. And if they're not on yet, it's hard to keep track of all these faces. Todd Turner, if he's not joined us yet, will be joining us, who's a council member from Greenbelt and Bowie, as well as Danielle Glaros, who represents Lanham, University Park, Riverdale, New Carrollton, and a number of areas as well. And we're also going to be joined, if not already, by a school board member representing our area, Pamela Boozer-Strother, and probably some others. And if there are others, I take responsibility, but it's hard as people come on, keeping track and keeping that going. So Mayor Alan Thompson from Riverdale, thank you, Alan, for what you do and for joining us as well. You know, this year we utilized 3 brothers, but unfortunately the 3 brothers are down to 1 brother. Mario Rapoli, who obviously came to almost all of our dinners. Many of you knew he ran the Bladensburg store. He passed away of pancreatic cancer this year. A wonderful, wonderful man, human being, as well as a really great business person who cared about the community. So we think about him as well. I don't want to get into a long list of people we've lost, but as you know, Senate President Mike Miller passed away the other day, and there'll be more on that later, and there'll be an event for him. And as many of you know, over many years, Mike and I were sometimes adversaries. We built into a mutual respect for each other, and then we became friends. It was 2 hard-headed people locking horns. I guess that's a mixed metaphor. But I learned a lot from him, and we battled, but he was quite a force. And again, not just the longest serving Senate president in Maryland, but in the whole country, the history of the country. And he kept things moving. So we think of him as well. Have we been joined by Delegate Healy?
Yes, here I am.
Okay, and I took part of your duties. So with that, let me introduce the first of our 3 delegates who are going to share some thoughts about their thinking about Dr. King, about the upcoming session, about the United States. And at some point, we're also going to hear from a very special guest, Congressman Anthony Brown. Delegate Healy.
Thank you, Senator. And I'm just amazed and so happy that so many people have decided to join us tonight. Using this new technology, we're still getting used to it. Although I'm having like 3 or 4 of these meetings a day now that we've started session. And before that, it was a couple of days. So things are different this year. And obviously the COVID-19 virus has changed our lives in all kinds of ways. And we're doing all kinds of things to try to adjust to that and take care of each other and take care of ourselves. I wanted to say a couple of things personally. I think many of you have seen the story in the Washington Post about my personal health issues. I was diagnosed with breast cancer last summer, and I have been treated, and I am still in treatment, but I am doing very well. It turned out not to be as serious as we thought at first, and I've been responding to the treatment, and I'm feeling better and stronger every day. And I'm very happy to be here and to be representing you. And I don't expect anything else to happen that's going to be negative for my health. At least, you know, I'm trying to stay positive. In the meantime, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening in our time. We're here to honor Dr. King. And Dr. King was assassinated the year that I graduated from high school. And that was a time, that was a time of great turmoil, but a time of great hope and aspiration. And there were terrible things, assassinations. 1968 was a terrible year. I think 2020 is probably worse, but because it has affected so many people have gotten sick, so many people in our country have died, and we're still in turmoil. But I do believe we have a great moment of hope, and we're going to have a new president in a couple of days. And I have great hope that Joe Biden has all the qualities that are needed in this time, in this moment. And I think that I believe Before I go any further, I want to say my faith has been tested, and I want to thank all of the people that have reached out to me with prayers and kind thoughts about my health situation. But the whole country is wrestling with health issues, and we need to be kind to each other and take care of each other. And that's always been something that I love about our district. I love and I miss getting out and talking to our constituents, to you, the people that have come here, and people that we see in the communities, at the farmers markets and at the door knocking, and all the things that we do to stay connected to each other. And I think we're really trying very hard to continue to do that, to stay connected to each other, in spite of the fact that we can't actually physically look each other in the eye, and we can't shake hands and hug, all those things that really make us feel more connected. So we have to make a little bit more of an effort. And some people, it's easier than others. Some people enjoy this much more than others, being on Zoom. And I can see, let's see, 25 people on a screen at a time. I can't look out across a room of 200 people and see everybody and just scan how everybody is talking to each other and breaking bread together. We do miss Mario. We do miss a lot of people that have come and gone in this last year. We left session early. We lost a lot of bills because the session ended early, and we're starting very fast now. We're having public hearings right away this week. We've already had a lot of public hearings last week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we were already hearing bills, but a lot of those bills were bills that had passed the House and didn't get out of the Senate because of the time frame, because we just lost that time. And we're hoping to make up some of that and pass some of these bills early so that we can, because we really don't know how long the session is going to last. It's supposed to be 90 days, but it was only 71 days last year. And we don't know if there's going to be an outbreak. We hope not. We're doing everything we can to prevent that. The House is meeting with just pro forma meetings for the House floor until February. And we're doing all our committee work online on Zoom. So we're not even going into Annapolis in the House, except for a very few people and skeleton crews and people that are working alone in their offices so that their staffs aren't exposed. It's just a real challenge this year. But nevertheless, there's a lot to look forward to when we're going to be doing some major work in this short or long session. We are taking on some major issues, things that have come up in the last year. We're going to do police reform. We're going to take care of making sure that the COVID, all the things that we're doing and partnering with the federal government now. We're hopeful that there's going to be some federal money coming down to the state and the local governments that will help us to be able to help our constituents and preserve people's ability to live in their homes and not be evicted or lose their homes through foreclosure. There are a lot of issues, and I'm not going to take a long time, but because we have other delegates, we have senators that want to speak, and I know that our other delegates are also working on some major issues. Delegate Nicole Williams is on the Judiciary Committee, which is going to take up major work on a variety of issues, and I'm sure she'll be able to tell you about that. I'm going to now introduce to you somebody that you know really does not need an introduction. That's Delegate Alonzo Washington, who has not been idle this past interim. He has been so busy. He was on the, he actually chaired or co-chaired the task force that Angela Alsobrooks, our county executive, put together on the issue of police reform. And he's been in the forefront of education reform, and he spent several weeks in Georgia helping to elect 2 U.S. senators that will make all the difference in the world as we go forward in the new administration of the federal government. So with that, I'd like to turn the meeting, my part of the meeting, over and say, Alonzo, please speak up.
Alonzo needs to be unmuted.
Thanks, and I would have spoke up if I could have, but unfortunately, this Zoom works. It's very robotic, and I'm just excited to be here, everyone. Good to see everybody. Let me just recognize a couple people who hopped onto the call late, who are elected officials, or as Paul said, very special people. I see Mayor Colin Byrd is here with us today from the town of Greenbelt. I see Central Committee member Chike Crossland, who's here. He's one of our newly appointed members on the Central Committee. And I believe I didn't see anybody else. I'm going to introduce the other guy, but and everybody saw him pop on real quick. But I'll talk about Congressman Brown in a second. But I wanted to just say hi to everybody and good to see so many of my friends, Miss Norma, Ashanti, Councilmember Lashley, the mayor. I can go on and on. It seems like a family affair here. I see former Mayor Adam Ortiz is on here from the town of Edmiston. My friend King is on here. How you doing, sir? I hope you're recovering well. But great to see you as well. And just so I'm just again, I think you all know this, that Martin Luther King means so much to me, especially in a time like we're in today and the experience that we've had over the summer, and bringing to the forefront the issues that have affected our communities, Black and Brown communities, for centuries and decades, 400 years of slavery, 400 years of oppression. This man arose from down south and came up. He was an alpha man, alpha brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Ain't that right, Nicole? You know about them, right? And my good frat brother Martin Luther King Jr., who I'm proud to call a brother of mine in my fraternity. I was watching ESPN, as I do most often, and I saw that the NBA team, the Hawks, the Atlanta Hawks, are going to be sporting a jersey of MLK in black and gold lettering for the rest of the year. Because in Atlanta, that's where Martin Luther King rests, and that's where he is. And it's just, and I know you're saying, well, why, Alonzo, why is NBA so important? Well, when COVID happened, NBA was the first ones to shut down, and the country ended up shutting down after the NBA shut down. When the NBA actually, they protested and stopped playing because someone was shot and killed in Milwaukee. The rest of the world stopped and looked at the NBA. So they've been in the forefront of these issues, the forefront of criminal justice reform, the forefront of racial justice and injustice that have occurred in our country. And I'm so proud of the work that they've done to elevate the issues, but it's going to take us as elected officials to really get that work done and run it home. And so that's why I'm so proud that Angela also Brooks appointed me as the co-chair of the police reform work group. Can you just believe that right now? This young black man, this PG kid was appointed as a co-chair to reform our police department, who has had racial issues for decades upon decades. And it was because of Martin Luther King that I'm able to do the things that I'm doing to make change in our community. And I'm gonna ask Sam Jackson, my legislative aide, to post in the chat so that all of you know and can see the 104-page report that we've issued from the county's perspective to really look at policing. We made recommendations to repeal LEOBR. We made recommendations to increase training and opportunities to increase more transparency, for them to collect data and make that data more transparent, for them to stop pulling people over for frivolous issues. And there's so many things in this, and it's out at 104 pages. You're going to see, and there are some comprehensive reforms that are not only to the General Assembly, that not only to Angela Alsobrooks, the county executive, but also to the county council and to the Maryland General Assembly. My approach was to make sure that we covered all aspects of policing, so that no one's left off the hook, right, Nicole? No one's left off the hook in this, and because we all have a say in what's going to happen in policing. And as Ann mentioned earlier, I'm just so proud, and I'm gonna go to Anthony Brown, to Congressman Brown in a second, but I'm just so proud of some of you might know this, but I've been I was appointed, hired by Casa in Action, which is a C4 organization. And I was hired in September to take over the reins of that organization to help get people elected that's going to help that's going to help push the issues of Black and brown people to the forefront. And so when we won in Pennsylvania and we brought home the victory for Vice President Biden and soon to be the first Black Vice President Kamala Harris, what I'm very proud about. And we won Pennsylvania and won them the presidency. We picked up our bags after November 4th, and we went right down to Georgia, and we got Raphael Warnock, the first Black senator, the U.S. senator elected in the South. Can you believe that? The first Black senator elected in the South, and we got Mr. John Ossoff elected, who's a son of immigrants, elected into the South. And so we turned Georgia blue, and therefore we turned this country blue, because we believe that it's going to take our people. We did not want to sit on our laurels. We got up and went down there and got folks. We knocked on over 50,000 doors. We worked with Stacey Abrams and New Georgia Project that was down there. Can we just give a quick shout out to Stacey Abrams and her work that she's done in Georgia to make Georgia blue? Come on, man. A Black woman doing this work because of Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Raphael Warnock. He is the preacher or the reverend for the same church that Martin Luther King preached at. Can you believe it? Look at history. Look at the history of this country. Look at the history of Black people that has come full circle. And I'm so happy that has happened. And I want to thank, I see Ashanti on here who works at CASA as well and went down there with us to knock on some doors and get people out. So thank you, Ashanti, for your hard work. But I just want to just say that, now is the time to get things done. We can't allow the Congress to let another session go by without them attacking Black and brown issues and bringing them to the floor of the House and to the floor of the Senate. From expanding from reforming criminal justice, reforming our police accountability, to making sure we have better health care in our country, to increasing the minimum wage, to expanding voting rights. We cannot allow this Congress and the U.S. Senate to sit idly by again until we get the things done. We won the Senate, Black and brown people won the Senate, and they must ante up and they must deliver for us and for our people. That is the right thing to do, and we cannot let them up. We have to hold them accountable for getting these things done. Being elected is not enough. Doing the work is what we want you to do. So with that said, I want to just thank you all for electing me and allowing this Black man to be himself and to be able to work on the issues that are so important to our country and so important to our state, and be able to introduce Black men like Anthony Brown, who's here today representing us in the 4th district here in Maryland, who's also our former lieutenant governor and also our friend. He needs no introduction, like Ann said about me. And Anthony Brown, thank you, Congressman. Thanks for being here. Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Speaker, right? I've heard that a lot about you. Anthony Brown, it's all yours. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Alonzo. I appreciate that. I appreciate you being you. I do have to take the opportunity, though, to correct you. It was not the NBA that stepped up, elevated the issue. It was the players in the NBA. In fact, they did it against a lot of resistance from the NBA as an entity. I commend to everyone the documentary Shut Up and Dribble, and guys like LeBron James and a lot of guys that came before him in the NBA. But good shout out to the players there, Alonzo. Let me say thanks, first of all, for allowing me to participate in this evening's event. It is an honor for me. I miss being with each and every one of you in the Miller Senate office building. I miss that almost as much as I miss Senator Miller himself. And like Paul said, we lost Mike Miller, force of nature. Like Paul, I didn't always agree with him, but he brought a sense of order. And sometimes it looked like a heavy-handed sense of order. But I think, as your senators and delegates from the 22nd district can attest to, you got to bring a little bit of order to what's otherwise a very chaotic process. And at least Mike allowed the full spectrum of issues and views and opinions, and occasionally actual legislation make its way through the Senate. But I do miss Mike Miller tremendously. It's a true honor, though, to be with you as we're celebrating the life and legacy of a man who has been described as the moral leader of the nation. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I do want to thank Senator Pinsky. Paul's been a dear friend. I want to congratulate you this term, being appointed by Senate President Miller and your peers to chair the Education, Health, and Environment Committee. Got a lot of important work coming up this next session. My good friend Delegate Ann Healy, and I'm just so pleased to hear about the progress you're making on your trajectory to really good health. So it's nice to be with you, Ann and Alonzo, and Nicole. Nicole, you're newest, and just doing a great job. Thank you for organizing this evening's event, and thank you for your tireless work on behalf of Maryland. And to District 22 residents, I am sincere when I tell you that Paul, Ann, Alonzo, and Nicole make up one of the strongest delegations in Annapolis, and I've seen a lot of them. They're strong because they're united around you, their constituents, and they really bring a level of service and smarts that is unmatched in Annapolis. So it's a real honor to be able to represent you in the 4th Congressional District and being able to do it in partnership with our District 22 team, and District 22, 4th Congressional, complete overlap. As we consider the purpose and promise of Dr. King's life's work, and as we prepare for the inauguration of President Biden and Kamala Harris as his vice president, we should also reflect on the challenges that we face in this new year and perhaps what I hope to be a new era, the post-Trump era. The world faces an unprecedented global pandemic that has disrupted each of our lives in a profound way. The novel coronavirus has had a tremendous impact on this country. Death and infection, unemployment and business closures. Communities of color, particularly the Black community, have been disproportionately harmed. And the same can be said about the Latino community. The hardest hit neighborhoods around the country are where Black and Latino residents make up more than 70% of households. But our country also confronts another virus that is sadly not new, but tragically no less deadly. And that's the virus of racism. This past summer, we witnessed highly visible instances of police violence against Black men and women. These events have led to a reckoning on race and the systemic racism and injustices that continue to exist in our country. The killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, and Daniel Prude, the shooting of Jacob Blake, all part of a pattern of racial violence that has existed for far too long in this country. One only needs to look at the treatment of largely peaceful protesters in the District of Columbia and other cities across the nation this summer, and then compare that with the treatment, the mild treatment to that of violent insurrectionists who assaulted our Capitol less than 2 weeks ago. Decades of implicit racial bias and systemic issues embedded in our healthcare, education, criminal justice systems, and our economy have put Black Americans at a disadvantage. Black Americans are more likely to die from the coronavirus, more likely to be unemployed at this time, and more likely to be killed by the police. And I firmly believe that race-neutral solutions won't solve the longstanding racial disparities in our society. We need targeted solutions that get resources to communities of color, promote equitable justice, and empower people of color with the tools that we need. This is a moment for each and every one of us to not only reflect, but for all of us to take action: civic action, political action, social action. Along with my colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus, we're taking up a number of important pieces of legislation. In addition to advancing and getting enacted into law, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, where we are going to restore all of those provisions that the Supreme Court gutted from the Voting Rights Act. We're also going to move on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which was passed by the House of Representatives last Congress. It will be reintroduced this Congress, and it's a long overdue step to advance the cause of justice and equality under the law. We need to reduce militarization of police departments, remove bad officers, hold them accountable for illegal behavior and gross misconduct. Officers should serve as guardians of our communities, not warriors acting aggressively. We need to ban the chokehold and outlaw racial profiling. Maryland has made a lot of progress on this front, but I know this legislative session, you're going to be doing even more. We're looking at how we at the state and federal level fundamentally restructure and transform policing in America. This pandemic has also heightened the racial health disparities in our state and our country. We have no choice but to prioritize getting health resources to communities of color. In Congress, I introduced legislation to create health enterprise zones in order to incentivize primary care providers to locate in underserved communities across the country. This bill will increase services available to low-income communities, reduce hospital visits, lower healthcare costs for individuals and providers, and improve health outcomes. We piloted this program successfully in Maryland. I know it's going to be reintroduced this year in the General Assembly. We piloted it in Maryland a few years ago, and now it's time to, as Alonzo said, for the federal government to step up and put some resources behind it. 26 years ago, President Ronald Reagan signed the bill creating a federal holiday honoring Dr. King. And at that time, President Reagan warned that, quote, traces of bigotry still mar the country. That was 1983, almost 2 decades after President Kennedy signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And while President Reagan's comment back then may seem the understatement of the 20th century, regrettably, it would be an understatement even today. Race and racism. These are not seen as traces across America. They are embedded in every aspect of American life. In education, so we see the educational achievement gap. In healthcare, we see the disparities in infant mortality and chronic diseases and the ravages of the current pandemic. In the criminal justice system, the military, the labor market, you name it. Systemic racism, whether caused by racial bias or motivated by overt racial animus, is still prevalent in America, and it still debilitates this country. In his I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King spoke of the sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent. Dr. King explained that the discontent will remain until there is, in his words, an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. Dr. King spoke those words on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, not far from where armed insurrectionists this month tried to overturn an election that we know was decided in large part by Black voters in not only cities like Philadelphia and Detroit, but also in southern states, Georgia and elsewhere, and voters who surmounted all types of racist restrictions. Dr. King gave that speech not far from the White House, where on the first day of June of last year, the President of the United States ordered the tear gassing of peaceful protesters to clear his way for a photo opportunity. President Trump held up the Bible, the same Bible from which Dr. King preached of peace. Dr. King preached the opposite of what President Trump was calling for when President Trump told governors to dominate the streets with troops to silence Black Americans. Black Americans who, in our own summer of discontent, the summer of 2020, were crying out precisely against being dominated. The killing of innocent men and women by police, the incarceration of so many more for minor offenses, the systemic neglect and disenfranchisement of communities of color, even in an age when redlining and voter suppression are supposed to be illegal. These are the so-called traces of bigotry that Dr. King spoke of about and that continue to plague our country. Traces of bigotry, as President Reagan called them? I don't think so. This is lots of racism. Yet I'm hopeful. Hopeful because your District 21 team, led by Senator Pinsky, understands the challenge. This legislative session, you're taking on action to reduce racial health disparities and protect vulnerable renters from eviction. They're putting police reform into action and having the hard, necessary conversations about public safety and racial bias. Mm-hmm. Our state is now poised to rebuild our public school system and invest in every student in school. And your District 22 team will ensure a world-class education for every child, no matter their zip code, starting with the override of Governor Hogan's veto of the Kerwin Commission blueprint for Maryland. Dr. King reminded Americans of the fierce urgency of now, calling on each of us to make real the promises of democracy. Maryland and our country are great because of the work that we do together to strengthen our democracy and expand opportunity. Our progress would not be possible without the hard work and leadership of people like Senator Pinsky and each and every one of you. But let us be clear about one thing. The invigorating autumn that Dr. King dreamed and spoke of has not yet arrived. And far too many people often are unwilling to admit that. It seems for many people, it's easier to think about how far we've come than how far we've got yet to go. Sure, we've made progress since the 60s, progress in science and technology, in transportation and energy, progress in agriculture, and perhaps even in commerce, but we haven't made the progress around the issues of race and identity. Dr. King might be mildly impressed with what we've been able to accomplish, but he wouldn't be satisfied. He would tell us that we cannot use today or any day to celebrate his legacy or our progress unless we reckon with those things that hold us back as a nation and as a people. He would challenge us to seize this moment, to bring our divided nation together today. So I look forward to continuing to work with you to turn our shared challenges into results for all Marylanders and all Americans as we serve District 22 residents and all of our constituents in the 4th Congressional District. So thank you for letting me share some thoughts and ideas, participating tonight, and God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you very, very much, Anthony. Thank you. Can we unmute Delegate Williams and she can say a few words?
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us tonight. I know you guys are super busy. There's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. right now, between impeachment and inauguration. And so really appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. As was said, today is the day where we commemorate the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King. And one of the things I was thinking about and just thinking about today, I was reading through his letter from Birmingham jail. And one of the things he mentioned in his letter was that we will have to, and this is a quote, we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. And that sentence resonated with me when I was reading through it, because I think, King would probably say that we are in our season right now of repenting that he spoke of so many years ago. We've observed those vitriolic words occurring over and over and over again over the last 4 years from the White House, and the appalling silence from some of our elected officials, some of our members in Congress and others. And so far, 2021 has really, in some respects, been a continuation of the partisan and political challenges we experienced and witnessed in 2020. But I'm hopeful. I feel as though with strength and determination, we can deal with these challenges and meet the current moment of the day, whether it's dealing with systematic racism or corporate greed or environmental injustice that we have known has occurred for way too long, and that has really came to a head this past year. And so, here in Annapolis, we're working hard to try to right some of those wrongs. I serve on the Judiciary Committee, and this session, I will have the pleasure of pushing through to the House floor legislation that will limit the use of force by our police departments across the state, requiring greater transparency and accountability by our police, and passing Anton's law to require police departments to provide greater access to police personnel records, as well as screening for implicit biases within our police department and with our recruits, and providing and requiring more performance reviews, and actually implementing performance review board, amongst a number of different items that we'll see in my committee this session. And I'm sure Paul will talk about some of this as well, but we're going to override some vetoes this session, some bills that the governor vetoed, such as the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which was based off of the Cohen recommendations that, we were honored to have our Senator Paul Pinsky and our Delegate Washington serve on that commission and bring forth those recommendations to the General Assembly, as well as overriding the governor's veto establishing equitable funding for our HBCUs here in the state of Maryland, and funding for our new Prescription Drug Affordability Board, as well as legislation that will require background checks for people who wish to purchase rifles and shotguns here in the state of Maryland. And so we're going to take care of that this year. Some of the other things that we're going to work on this year here in Annapolis, I know Senator Pinsky has his Climate Solutions Now Act of 2021 that's going to really revitalize the way we're dealing with climate change here in the state of Maryland, banning forever chemicals that we find in our drinking water, dealing with the health disparities that we saw in access to healthcare, especially amongst communities of color, and access to voting, greater protections for our essential workers, and ensuring stable housing, especially for those within our community who have been so negatively affected by this pandemic with the business closures and things like that. So all of those things are things that you're going to see us talking about and working on this upcoming session. I'm not going to sit here and, we were all excited for 2021 to get here. I know I was anyway. But 2021 is still going to have its challenges, and we're still going to be asked to continue to move forward. Dr. King reminds us that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And so change is going to take some time, but it will happen. It does happen. And we just have to remain hopeful, and we have to be consistent and continue to push. And so I also want to let everyone know, I receive all of your email messages and phone calls and messages about the changes that you all want to see. And I appreciate that feedback from all of you all of the residents here in our district. And so continue to send those messages, continue to push us to really enact the change that you want to see, continue to push our federal leaders and our local leaders for the change that you guys want to see, because it's not just going to happen by us resting on our laurels. We're all going to have to continue to push so we can get the justice that we wish to see for our community. So it's my honor and pleasure to serve you here in Annapolis and really to be your voice here in Annapolis. And so thank you guys so much for all of that. So next, I'm going to introduce Senator Pinsky, who really doesn't need any introduction. Everyone on this call knows who he is. But I'm sure he's going to say a few words as well about some of the things going on in Annapolis, what we're working on, what he's working on. And so without further ado, Senator Paul Pinsky.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Alonzo and Ann, and obviously Congressman Brown. Last week during the impeachment vote, Congressman Brown had the distinguished honor to preside over the House of Representatives for some of the time, and that's quite an honor. He also spoke during the impeachment, so he's a rising star, and the Speaker has shown a lot of confidence in him. So we look for even greater things going forward. So look, we're celebrating Dr. King tonight. So I'd like to talk about Dr. King and what he would think about the time we're in now. While Dr. King was a passionate and inspired speaker, minister, and leader, he also showed a type of patience and calmness. I just wonder what he would have made of the last 4 years, these last hideous 4 years. Obviously, over the 52 years since his murder, there have been steps forward and there have been steps back. We have seen many elected leaders who have simply given lip service to ending discrimination and in the struggle against racism and white supremacy. We've also witnessed the election of the first African-American president since in the history of the United States, but also as part of that 52 years since Dr. King was assassinated. During the last few years, we've witnessed a pushback on the Voting Rights Act, which Congressman Brown talked about. At the same time, last year, the 400th anniversary of the first slave on our continent, there was a fairly significant discussion about 1619. Even the New York Times magazine put a whole magazine to 1619. Was it enough? No, but it was some conversation that was clearly needed. And yes, during the last few years, we've witnessed the rise of the most unhinged, deranged, dangerous president this country has ever seen. And he hasn't just used dog whistles or subtle encouragement to send messages to the white supremacist and anti-government elements in our society. He laid it right out there. The Ku Klux Klan, the Nazis, and others who came to Charlottesville were good people. And in the recent election, President Trump called fraud and attempted to throw out the votes of Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona. It actually amounted to cutting out voters in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Maricopa County. So what it really was an attempt to disqualify the votes of African Americans and Latino voters. He essentially wanted to disenfranchise the children of former slaves who fought for and were finally granted the right to vote by our Constitution. And this comes, as Delegate Washington talked about, at the same time that we just elected Reverend Warnock, the minister at Ebenezer Baptist Church, the Church of Dr. King. So I believe that even Dr. King's head would be spinning, observing the times we're in now. And while I'm sure he would have held on to his belief of nonviolence, he, like us, I think, would be in some level of shock. And that takes me to January 6th, the day a white mob, maybe a loosely formed militia led by the President of the United States, stormed the Capitol to stop the steal, as he called it, to attack our democracy and Constitution. And he had plenty of help from elected leaders who either cheered him on or stayed silent. Bottom line, they wanted to overturn the will of the voters, disenfranchise Black and brown voters, and keep Trump in the White House. It was horrible on every front. We all witnessed it. We all know it. But what also, in my mind, and I think many of yours, was also extremely significant was that this white mob was not met with resistance generally shown by police and National Guard. There was no tear gas to slow them down, no billy clubs to stop them from entering and destroying the Capitol, nothing for 2 hours. I mean, how could that be? Historically, police forces have quickly turned to aggressive action, sometimes violent means when confronting protesters. Whether we go back to '65 and the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the many civil rights demonstrations of the 60s and 70s, or 1970, when students were killed on their campuses at Jackson State and Kent State. And of course, the many Black Lives Matter marches throughout the country over the last few years. Protests over the last 60 years and protesters, usually the more minority, the numbers of minority in the crowd, the more aggressive the response. But even with student protesters, Black and white, there's always been a more aggressive response. And I can tell you, as someone who's participated in many protests and actually some arrests, whether fighting against apartheid in South Africa or US involvement in foreign wars where they didn't belong, or stopping oil pipelines which perpetuate climate change, I can tell you there were plenty of times the tear gas was thrown pretty quickly and the billy clubs came out pretty abruptly. But in 2021, in an attack on the US Capitol to stop government, they were allowed in with virtually no resistance. Clearly, this was emblematic of the double standard in our society, one for white society and one for Black society. So we've witnessed that. We were appalled, we were saddened, we were angry. And that will change to some degree on Wednesday with the new president. We still have, as a number of the delegates have said, many challenges ahead. But what does that mean for Annapolis, our work in Annapolis? We can't solve all of society's problems in Annapolis, but we will work to improve the condition of the voiceless, of the 99% who don't control the nation's wealth. We want to bring back people from the destruction caused by the pandemic. We want to offer help in unemployment, rent relief, and the many young people across the state who were crushed by remote learning. And the learning loss was so detrimental to these young people. You know, even in the most middle class and upper middle class communities, I think they probably lost at least 3 months of learning. And in some of the poorer communities in Baltimore and Prince George's, impoverished, where they didn't even have connectivity to the broadband or access to Wi-Fi, the learning loss could be as much as a year or even more. And as been said, police accountability has to be at the forefront and will be at the forefront, and we will pass legislation on that issue. Police cannot be seen as an occupying force. They must work as part of the community, with the community, be of the community. And as Delegate Washington and Delegate Williams spoke about, the current police officer Bill of Rights goes too far in protecting bad police, and it must stop. Think about it. Many of the calls that turn to violent are domestic violence calls. Why do we send 2 armed police officers? Why not send 1 and a social worker to de-escalate the situation? I mean, there are many things we can do differently to reduce the danger and the harm that comes about when the police try to do their job. And in education, as Delegate Williams talked about, we have to override Governor Hogan's veto of the Kerwin proposals. We put in place last year a 10-year phased-in program to reform our schools, all of the schools, to help people in Baltimore and Prince George's and Howard County and Montgomery County and Anne Arundel County as well, in the Eastern Shore and the Western Mountains, based on 3 years of research and work. So the governor got in the way and has tried to push it back a year. We're going to override that. And finally, let me just mention, Delegate Williams talked about climate change. Storms are worse, hurricanes are worse, flooding gets worse, wildfires in California get worse. Climate change is real. And there's some people who likes to put their head in the sand. It's not going away. And in fact, the environmental challenges have major, major implications in the minority communities. That's where a lot of these facilities are placed. The asthma and the public health are affecting our young people, particularly Black and brown people, and it has to stop. And I'm hoping we pass the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2021. Let me try to wrap up because we have a beautiful song coming after I finish. We've been distracted over the last 4 years because of Trump and his supporters and these unfortunately millions of people who bought into his horrible, horrible, lying, anti-government attitudes. So it is real and it is part of the fabric of America, unfortunately, and we have many rivers to cross. But it can't deter us from the challenges for social justice and civil rights, for economic justice. Inequality of wealth is just outrageous in this country, and also for environmental justice. Today, Congressman Jim Clyburn, the highest ranking African-American in Congress, he recalled Dr. King's writing from the Birmingham jail and our duty. And he said, "It's time for the people of goodwill to stop being complicit. Silence is consent. Don't let this country come apart based on those lies and silence. Stand up and speak the truth." And as the old gospel and civil rights song said, keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. Thank you. In closing tonight, we have a very special guest, Diane Wall Crossland. Diane's from Hyattsville, and I've known Diane for many years. She sings with a singing group called Rafiki Nadada, and she's in medicine, occupational medical physician. And interestingly enough, we learned we had some common history together. Her father was the first African-American doctor at Cooper Hospital in Camden, New Jersey. And it was at Cooper Hospital where I was born. Now, I don't know who delivered me, but I can tell you that she and Robert have broken barriers and Diane's family for many, many years. And it's actually being passed on with their son, Chike, and the rest of their family. So with that, as most of you who've been coming to our events know, we always end it with Lift Every Voice. So with that, if we can unmute Diane, that would be terrific. Welcome you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Paul. This has been such an excellent program. Ordinarily, when we sing Lift Every Voice and sing, everyone stands. So I don't think we're going to be able to achieve that this time. But consider ourselves standing virtually so that we know that we are honoring this song, which is also called the Black National Anthem. So everyone's going to sing along. It's not a solo. Okay.
I think we have the words for those who are not familiar with it. So we're going to share the screen.
Okay.
Give us 1 second.
Sure. I just really appreciate hearing all of the activities of our district, our leaders in District 22. Very pleased with the priorities.
As am I.
Susan,
Are they waiting for the words?
are we able to get a shared screen?
I think that's Susan.
Well,
Everybody look at your phone, Google lyrics.
yeah, thumbs
lift
up
every
or thumbs
voice and
down,
sing.
Susan. Are we able to get it up? Oh,
There it is.
Ah, it's coming. There it
Okay,
is. Okay,
Perfect.
great.
excellent.
Okay. All right. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Diane. That was great. You know, friends, members of the 22nd and people outside of the 22nd, we've tried to replicate what we do in person. While we couldn't have as much interaction and hear each other and talk to each other and catch up with each other and in the food line as we normally do, or afterwards, or have some of you walk across the street to the chambers, we're making do, and I would say even more than making do. We're working. The government is going forward. We're going to pass bills. We're committed to improving the quality of life for the people in Maryland and the 22nd District. And I think I can speak for everybody to say that we're your voice. We're your tributes. You know, your thoughts, your feeling, your experiences are what help shape our belief, our policies in going forward. So we're a vehicle, we're a vessel. We believe this district is a progressive district that wants to fight for social justice, economic and environmental justice, and we are committed to doing just that. So thank you very much. Be safe, be healthy, and when shots are available, please get them. We have to get as many people vaccinated as possible. We have to get a critical mass. And here in Prince George's County, it's starting to open up. So keep an eye out. And when you can, please get your shot. Thank you. Good night. We think of Dr. King tonight. Thank you.